This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The drifters hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Journey with the cinephile, unseen, unseen. The veils twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that here on episode 312. So this is the last episode of season 5 here. So episode 52. So this is, of course, what I always kind of end off the seasons with is going to be my Halloween episode, number 5 for these, of course. So the two feature reviews I have here, I got to check out VHS Halloween at Nightmares Film Festival on the big screen, so I'm going to have that as the first feature review. I'm pairing that up with Cemetery of Terror. This is a Mexican film that takes place on Halloween, so I thought this made for a little interesting double feature here. And then for mini reviews, I gave a rewatch to Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. That is a Voyage of the Fives rewatch from 1995. And then I went to the theater to see Black Phone 2. I gave a watch for, these are some Hooptober movies, as well as just a rewatch for 2025, but I watched Aporia, and then Trick or Treat 1986, and then I have a rewatch for the rewatch I have is The Invisible Half, and then I have a short film of He, and then 3 episodes of a TV show called The Trouble with Tessa. So I don't think there's anything else I need to do here for this intro outside of saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
Dave,
Liam,
it's a trailer.
Watch It If You Can podcast. Join us for each episode as we create box sets of our favourite films and TV shows.
We go through the cast to see what else they've been in, along with any recommendations.
We pick our favourite characters, performances, moments and highlights from the soundtrack too.
We ask if there's anything to make it better and look at the lasting legacy of our pick.
We have a little fun with our quickfire round, and finally, what else would you like list based on themes from the episode.
Maybe, just maybe, you should watch it if you can.
What if you've already seen it?
Well, you can watch it again if you can.
And for my first mini review here for Halloween is going to be Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. I believe this is number 6. So this is from 1995, directed by Joe Chappell. And then this was written by Daniel Ferens. And then they're also giving credit here to Deborah Hill and John Carpenter for good reason. This stars Donald Pleasance, Paul Rudd, and Marianne Hagen. This is a slasher supernatural horror thriller film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 4.7 on IMDb and a 2.0 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis being 6 years after Michael Myers last terrorized Haddonfield, he returns in pursuit of his niece Jamie Lloyd, who has escaped with her newborn child, for which Michael and a mysterious cult have sinister plans. So in this one, the shape is being portrayed by George P. Wilbur, and then in this one, Jamie Lloyd is recast as J.C. Brandy. She's in it very small amount of time though. So this one, I think I watched the first time with my mother and sister. I'm not even sure when. I think we rented it, and I remember watching it out on our enclosed porch. I believe from there, though, I know my mother is a fan of the original. I had probably seen that one already. I think she had shown me it at least. This isn't necessarily one that I have sought throughout the years. I know I've seen it once for a review. So this was my Voyage of the Fives rewatch here, since I had not really covered it on the podcast as of yet. And so I'm going to say is that this one really kind of leans really hard into the elements and ideas of family. We have, in this one, Tommy Doyle is portrayed by Paul Rudd. That's not really a family thing, but he is, the little boy from the original film. But we do have the Strodes. I believe this is actually supposed to be like Laurie's parents. I think it's her uncle is John, portrayed by Bradford English. He's married to Deborah, portrayed by Kim Darby. Then we have Kara, portrayed by Mary Ann Hagen. And then she has a son who is Danny, portrayed by Devin Gardner. And then she has a brother, Tim, portrayed by Keith Bogart. So you have to manage expectations. This is the 6th installment of the Halloween franchise. Does some good things. The Cult of Thorn is front and center in this one. They use it to help explain why Michael is this evil entity that he is. It also explains why he doesn't die easily. I like how this briefly introduced in the previous film. This isn't my favorite line of sequels, so there's that as well. So I have this set up. Let's kind of go into another aspect here, and I love the effects of Haddonfield that Michael has. They've banned celebrating Halloween for the last 6 years, so I believe that would have been the last one where Jamie couldn't talk. This feels like something real that would happen. My only issue here is that they're pretending almost like that Michael doesn't exist. They're pushing this narrative, at least this character who's on the radio of Barry Sims, portrayed by Leo Getter. That's something that, we know that something bad happened here, and it has become like an urban legend. So then Tim is actually seeing a young lady of Beth, portrayed by Mariah O'Brien. Now, they're working hard with a group of people here in town trying to bring back Halloween. I think that's cool. It kind of amplifies the results that could be blamed on them as things kind of go down here. Now, we do have some plot holes for me as well. Now, let's go over to that. This is a slasher film. This was kind of boring. For me, I look for good kills or characters. I'll start with the latter and say that introducing Laurie's uncle, I believe that the connection, that's what it is that they had a real estate company together, which kind of goes all the way back to the original film. So the Strode family seems to be used more of like a buzzword as well as cannon fodder. That's something I'll give credit to the film, is that we have a good number of people who are killed off here. No one is great, but it at least works to continue this line of the story. So there's one aspect here that I want to include here, that's obsession. Learning the true origin of evil. Michael is considered the embodiment. Dr. Loomis, once again, Donnie P., Donald Pleasance. He's obsessed with studying and containing it. So Tommy, after having that encounter as a boy, has become an expert, and that he's really kind of devoted his life to figuring things out. There's also a deeper reveal later that feels a bit forced, but it's still fine. I'm going to go ahead and shift over to filmmaking and say, for the most part, this is made well enough. I don't have any major issues with the cinematography or the framing. I do like what they're trying to do here. There's some decent effects used. We get a variety of kills, which I appreciate. The soundtrack is solid. I do like trying different things with the theme while using the mainstays from the original soundtrack. The biggest issue I have here is that it's just boring. I had to look up what happened as I lost interest, and when I was doing my review to kind of make sure everything was in line, that was what I did. All that's left to be the action performances. Donald Pleasant's return as Loomis is noteworthy, though not his best due to screen limitations. Rudd and Hagen are effective as Tommy and the mother, respectively, with Gardner as her son. Ryan is an interesting new character. Darby, and that would be Mitchell Ryan, who's Dr. Wynn. He actually wants Dr. Loomis to come back to Smith's Grove to kind of work and everything, just because of everything that's gone down with Michael. So Darby and English portraying the Strode parents well, with English portrayal of the father as a jerk is an interesting choice. Wilbur's a decent Michael, and the supporting cast filled their roles adequately. In conclusion, this attempts to deliver deeper into the mythology of Michael Myers through the introduction of the Cult of Thorn, a concept that had some minor foreshadowing in previous installments. Despite good performances from Pleasance, Rudd, and Hagen, and a variety of kills, the film's lack of character development, boring execution, narrative limitations, and pacing issues make it a middling entry, failing to maintain audience engagement, at least for me. And I'll also say, I watched the theatrical cut here. I still need to see the producer or whatever that cut that is called there, so that's one that's still kind of eluded me thus far. But for Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, I give this one a 6 out of 10 this time around. Then for my next mini review here is going to be Black Phone 2. This is from 2025, directed by Scott Derrickson, who also co-wrote this with C. Robert Cargill, and they're giving credit here to Joe Hill, who did the original short story. So this stars Mason Thames, Ethan Hawke, and Melody McGraw. This is a psychological slasher supernatural horror film that is from a co-production of the United States and Canada. Currently sitting on a 6.6 on IMDb and a 3.2 on Letterboxd, or synopsis being. 4 years after escaping the grabber, Finney Blake struggles with life after his captivity. His sister now receives calls in her dreams from the Black Phone, and she sees disturbing visions of 3 boys being stalked at a winter camp known as Alpine Lake. So this is one that I didn't know necessarily was being made until close to its being released. At first, I was confused as how this would be made. So I started talking to my wife, Jamie, and she saw the original with me, and we both kind of pointed out that it was already kind of supernatural in that original one. So I did miss this during the opening weekend, but I did end up catching it at the Gateway Film Center, soon after that to make sure that I checked this out in the theater. Where I'll start then is that this is smart to have this take place some years later, since the original one was a few years ago when it came out. They came back to the core of the main cast, so that's awesome that I love that they got those people back. They're now older, so that tracks. Something I found interesting here is they brought back the actor who was Angel. Now this time he's playing his younger brother of Ernesto, portrayed both times by Miguel Mora. So then Finn is portrayed by Thames, and then we have Gwen, who is McGraw, and then of course the grabber is once again Hawk. So another good touch here is opening this mirroring the previous film where we have Finn beating up a kid and Gwen stepping in yelling and everything. So then let's go ahead and break down some of the development of our leads. Finn is now a bullying character but with emotional depth. Stronger after his ordeal with the grabber, he is inwardly hurting and self-medicating with marijuana. He also takes his pain out on his classmates. He needs therapy, which is unlikely in that time, especially for a male. Ironically, he has fallen in the footsteps of his recovering alcoholic father, Terrence, portrayed once again by Jeremy Davies, whom he hated in that first film. So there's also what we get stuff here with Gwen, as she has some interesting growth. Now, she's ostracized at school as she lashes out at Ernesto, who tries to be friends with her. He is able to calm her down. Now, she's having these disturbing dreams, which is similar to what her mother was having, and that also was what was believed to led to the mother's suicide, and then as well as Terrence's addiction. So Finn wants to ignore these events, urging Gwen to do the same, but she believes that she can appease the spirits by helping them. Thames and McGraw excelled in creating emotional depth, especially McGraw with her dramatic portrayal. Where I want to then go would be our new location in the grabber. I'll bring back up that I can roll this idea that since the first one had ghosts helping Finn escape, what makes sense now is that the grabber is back. This definitely is taking elements from Freddy Krueger. He is haunting dreams, his power grows with fear. There's even something in the story that could be a direct homage to Nightmare on Elm Street 3. There's a backstory element here that I guessed. It doesn't ruin it. I will say is that it makes sense, especially with the progression of real serial killers. Let's then finish out with the actor performances. I've already said that Thames and McGraw are good in their development of their characters, especially now that they're older. Hawk is used on a limited basis, but he's still terrifying. What's interesting is that we never see his face. He's more of like a boogeyman. And then we also have in this one here, the guy who is running this summer camp where they go to. He is Mondo, portrayed by Damien Bichir. He is good as this guy who runs the camp, like I was saying. And we also have Mora. He's solid in his role. I like Davies being brought back. I'll also give credit here to Ariana Rivas. She is a young lady who works at the camp as well. She handles the stables. There's also Mev Beatty, Anna Lore, Graham Abbey, and we also have a cameo here by James Ransone. They're all solid. Acting was good across the board. All it's out to be filmmaking aspects. I love this isolated camp that it's set in. It feels cold. There's definitely the Shining vibes there. How they shot things was great too. I love the old film look when they're in dreams. That feels like Derrickson is borrowing from Sinister. There's also a grindhouse feel as this killer is stalking the boys, or what Gwen experiences. That was all well done. I also give credit to the effects. It gets cheesy for me a bit with the grabber attacking Gwen. What we saw though was good. It's brutal there. The soundtrack and design also adds to the creepy atmosphere. So in conclusion, this successfully builds upon its predecessor by jumping forward in time and bringing back its core cast, allowing for compelling character development, particularly for Finney and Gwen. The film wisely transitions the grabber to a more ethereal, dream-haunting villain reminiscent of Freddy Krueger, while introducing a chilling new setting at Alpine Lake. With strong performances from the returning actors and effective filmmaking that evokes classics like The Shining and Sinister, the movie delivers a brutal and atmospheric horror experience that expands its supernatural mythos in an intelligent way. So my rating here, I gave The Black Phone 2. I really enjoyed this. I have both my ratings for both films be very similar to each other. I gave this an 8 out of 10. And then up next for you, I have a foreign film here of Aporia from 2019, written and directed by Rek Revan. This stars Asiel Yusubova, Pervez Isamalova, and Rahim Gojai. And if I'm mispronouncing those names, I do apologize. But this is an action-adventure horror thriller film that is from Azerbaijan. First movie I've ever watched from this country. So this is currently sitting on a 3.8 on IMDb and a 2.7 on Letterboxd, where it's synopsis being 2 human guinea pigs brave the horrors and uncertainties of a bold escape attempt that could either lead them to freedom or push them towards doom. So this one was filling something that I was doing for an October movie challenge. I needed a movie from a former Soviet Union country. This is the first film, like I said, that I've seen from Azerbaijan, so that was interesting. Other information I share here, I did come into this one blind. So where I'm going to start for this, though, is that we have an interesting but simple premise. It builds intrigue as we see these two trucks with a bunch of people in the back. You know things aren't going to end well. There's an element of seeing how ruthless the guards are as they try to run. We also get this interesting scene in one of the cabs where the guy who's in charge is talking about how cheap human life is. And when we go back to the people in the truck bed, there's a comment that starts to create panic. And then we actually see some interesting stuff here as our duo gets trapped in a trench. And I was kind of curious as what we would kind of do from there. And those two leads are going to be Ejla, portrayed by Yusubova, and Arvin, portrayed by Izmailov. So sticking with the positives, it's interesting that this becomes a contained horror film. My guess is part of that's not having a large budget. Isolating two characters in this deep trench helps there. I do like the idea, and it would be terrifying to use what you have to survive by hiding and then realize that you're trapped. The tension then grows from our two characters might be infected with something. Arvin and Ilja are hiding, information from each other. I like the idea of surviving against overwhelming odds. So there's also this element of an unethical experimentation. We get hints that the guards were told to bring everybody back. This seems to be a zombie virus as the characters that we do get to see that were killed do come back from the dead. I do like this part, but I do think it's underutilized, unfortunately, and all but fades away for long stretches. This then parlays into the last aspect that I like. There's a fear of the unknown where this could be leading to the apocalypse. The problem there is how it ends. It does allude to it. We just need a little bit more. Let's then shift over to the filmmaking aspect. Cinematography effectively conveys the group's isolation, creating a terrifying sense of being cut off from civilization. The trench's confined atmosphere and the practical zombie effects were well executed. The film subtly suggests the possibility of nightmares or hallucinations due to hardships. While the sound design is appropriate, the film becomes boring and meandering once the group reaches the trench. All that's left then to be acting performances. I do think that Izmailov and Yusubova were fine. The version on Tubi was dubbed, so it makes you wonder if certain things were lost in translation. As a fan of Italian cinema, there is charm there. I will say the people play the infected were good. The acting here is fine across the board. So in conclusion, this presents an intriguing, albeit simple premise of survival and unethical experimentation within a contained horror setting. While the cinematography and practical effects are commendable in conveying isolation and the terror of being trapped, this struggles with pacing and fully utilizing its potential apocalyptic themes. The performances are adequate, though the dub version might affect the overall impact. Ultimately, Aporia offers some compelling ideas but loses momentum in its execution, leaving me wanting more developed and less meandering narrative. So my rating, though, unfortunately, I did not really care for this, even though I did try to go as positive as I could. I gave Aporia a 3.5 out of 10. Then up next, I got to check out Trick or Treat, also for that horror movie challenge that I'm doing. So this is from 1986. This is directed by Charles Martin Smith. Now, there's a bunch of writers here, so let me get everybody straight real quick as I pull this up. And this looks like... Well, the story was done by Rhett Topham. Now, the screenplay was done by Michael S. Murphy, Joel Soyson, and Topham. And then there's some uncredited work here done by Glenn Morgan and James Wong. This stars Mark Price, Tony Fields, and Lisa Orgolian. And then this is a dark comedy horror music film that's from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.9 on IMDb and a 3.2 on Letterboxd, for a synopsis being a bullied teenage boy is devastated after the death of his heavy metal icon, Sammy Kerr, but his Halloween night approaches. He discovers that he may be the only one who can stop Sammy from making a satanic comeback from beyond the grave. So this one I covered way back on episode 5, which was my winter year-end number 2 that featured Dead Snow 2, Red vs. Dead, and Satanic Panic. This was one of the 3 little mini reviews that I had over there. Man, it was such a different time. But so this one here, it tells the story of Eddie Weinbauer, who is portrayed by Price. Now, he goes by Ragman. So he's the bullied teenager who, when Sammy Kerr, portrayed by Tony Fields, passes away, he ends up getting this record from the local VJ, who is portrayed by Gene Simmons, who is Nuke. And then this studio thing here that he has might have some power here that can kind of do some things. So this explores themes of bullying, revenge, music censorship, presenting a satirical take on the perceived dangers of heavy metal music. While a slasher elements, it focuses more on Eddie's bullied life and his desire for revenge with Sammy's help. Sammy, who also attended the same high school as the characters, seeks revenge for being denied doing a Halloween show by some of the local parents and teachers as well. So I really kind of like the effective performance of Price as the relatable bullied victim and Fields as his flamboyant villainous Sammy. We have cameos here by Simmons as, like I said, Nuke. Ozzy Osbourne plays Reverend Aaron Gilstrom. He's definitely underused, but it's kind of funny to see him here. So we have some early computer effects and supernatural elements that were driven by electricity, which, despite some budgetary limitations, does kind of fit that horror comedy genre of the 80s. And I mean, there's some charm there for doing what they could. The soundtrack is reminiscent of hair metal, and fitting for the film's rockstar theme. So this one here, I think it's socially relevant and entertaining horror comedy that after this most recent watch, I still have it as a 7 out of 10. And I actually watched this on Screambox. And then my next one's also going to be kind of here's a little bit of a smaller one because I've already covered this before, but this is The Invisible Half. This is from 2025. This is written and directed by Masika Nishiyama. This stars Lisa Sierra, Miyu Okuno, and Runa Hirasawa. This is a Japanese horror film that is from Japan. This, I may actually make sure this might also be a co-production, but I want to just nope, this is just from Japan. So this is currently sitting on a 6.9 on IMDb. Nice. But that's also off of 9 ratings. Not enough over on Letterboxd, but I'd say about a 3.5 to a 4-star over there, with the synopsis being Elena, a half-Japanese girl, struggles with her identity. While constantly watched, she discovers that she's being watched by someone else, a monster that can only be seen through her smartphone and heard through her earphones. So I'll say Sierra is playing this young lady of Elena, and then the friend she actually makes here, I think her name is Akiri. She is portrayed by Okuno. And so this one here, I did a mini review back on episode 295, which was my top horror films from 1925. So if you'd like to hear a little bit more, I'll direct you over to there. But what I will say is that Elena is struggling with her identity. And so, like I said, befriends Akari in her new school. She actually got transferred over because she might have tried to kill herself. So she gets tormented by these mean girls. They call her a gaijin, which is a foreigner. Now, another classmate of Neon Ito, portrayed by Hirasawa, is targeted by bullies, and it seems that she believes she's being followed by a dark entity. An incident occurs where Neon's phone is hidden in Elena's bag, leading to a police investigation. And Elena finding it, and it actually cuts her fingers. And this is kind of interesting because the entity looks like a mummy with bandages, and she must have to figure out who it is as it starts to come after Elena. So this one does use some interesting things here with like technology, particularly smartphones and earbuds as a plot device and a thematic tool. The entity is audible only through a smartphone connected to an earpiece, creating the tension when adults tell characters to, take those out. And the cracking of Elena's phone screen by her mother is a foreshadowing of danger. So some identity stuff here. Helena is struggling with her mixed heritage. Bullying mirrors the immigrant experience of balancing heritage and assimilation. So the invisible half also reflects in the theme with the movie itself. So we have some blends here of like J-horror from the 2000s with use of technology seen in like Ringu and One Missed Call with some Western horror elements. For the acting, I thought Sierra portrays Elena with some stoicism, conveying like depression and alienation. Okuno's performance as Akiri is strong. It's kind of interesting there is that she kind of toes the line of wanting to include Elena, but also not wanting to get made fun of herself. Hirasawa effectively foreshadows Elena's struggles as Neon. And then for cinematography and sound, there's some great cinematography here, framing and sound design, using surreal nightmare-like sequences and long shots to create a creepy atmosphere. The muffled sound when Elena is wearing her earbuds enhances the perspective and almost makes you feel like you're there with them. So I did come down a little bit on this one. I was originally at an 8. I've come down as a 7.5 on this one, but definitely one that when it becomes available, I would recommend. I just wanted to give it another go for my end-of-year list. And then I also have here a short film that I'm going to cover of He. This is from 2025, written and directed by Hira Vin. This stars Nick Altobelli, Alex Payton, and Matthew Kevin Anderson. So this is a horror short that is from Canada. And so there isn't enough ratings yet on IMDb or Letterboxd, so the synopsis is, a woman desperate for affection and love has signed up for unconventional dating service that utilizes a combination of dark magic and science to summon an entity to please any person that it encounters. So I got a chance to see this one when the star Altobelli reached out with a screener. It debuted at Brooklyn Film Festival, so I got the chance to see it early. Originally, I thought this was going to be feature length, so when I settled in to watch it, seeing it's only runs, I believe, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that, I was stoked, but other than that, I came into this one blind. So to kind of give a little bit more information here, we are following Nancy Winters, portrayed at Altobelli. Now, it looks like she's in lingerie. She's talking to somebody on the phone, and it sounds like her fiance. It isn't. But it sounds like they're seriously dating. The voice belongs to Python. Now, their chemistry is great, and you can feel the passion. That's when she's cut off as an automated recording kicks in, stating that if they want to keep talking, she has to pay more money. We then shift to realize where this service is based. We see others waiting, including one who's leaving from her session. She's fixing her clothes. We then see there's precautions that are taken that are quite serious. There's a control room watching to ensure that nothing bad happens. Part of it is that the clients cannot see the owner of the voice. Nancy is determined, even jeopardizing everybody involved. So let's leave my introduction to the characters and expansion of the synopsis. Since this is a short, I tend to judge these whether they tell a complete story or if they could be fleshed into something more. I do think this does well in the length that we have. It has an intro that hooked me, things get weird and then tense. The ending also fits. I will say is I'll be curious to see more as well. What I will say is that I was intrigued by this company, so I found my wife on a dating app. At the time of writing my review, we've been together for 6 years, married for 4 of them, and we have 2 children. Now, the chemistry between Altobelli and Python is there. It starts to get heavy and then it gets cut off. I can't fault her for being driven to see this entity that she's paired with because she is so attracted, even if it results in disaster. Their connection is strong and it makes sense. Now, circling back to this company, I love the little things that we get there. Feels a little bit like the cabin in the woods with the people watching from a control room. There's also little things that they do to prepare Nancy for her encounter, as well as what needs to be done to make the entity appear. Now, the care and thought put into this is great. It hooks me to see where things go. I'll then say that Altobelli and Python are great for what we need and what was needed there. Their chemistry makes us work. The rest of the cast were solid in support, and I also think that this is well made. The cinematography and framing were solid. There's some cool things where we see a room where Nancy meets the entity. The truth is quite jarring in the best way. I think the effects were good. The sound design also helps with the atmosphere needed. In conclusion, this is a compelling short that successfully delivers a complete and engaging narrative within its concise runtime. Director and writer here, Vin, along with the strong cast led by Altobelli and Python, craft a unique story blending dark magic and science in a dating service setting. The film's intriguing concept, strong performances, and effective technical execution make it a memorable experience that leaves the viewer curious for more, ultimately earning a solid recommendation. So my rating here then for Heat, I give this one an 8 out of 10. The also end of these mini reviews is that I was reached out to by Dennis Kalo. If I mispronounce your name, I do apologize. He had reached out. He is, I believe, one of the people behind the show as well. He is a person who is in the show as well. And that's going to be the trouble with Tessa. Now, I know my buddy Aaron over on A&B Horror, and he also has his great stuff over on Instagram. He had already, I think, covered this one previously. But so this is a 6-part TV show. I got to watch the first 3 parts, and the part 1 is Tessa. So this is following a disgraced documentarian, Tessa Fowler, as she arrives in a quirky town of Lowry and discovers a box of old tapes that appear to have caught a murder. So this one here, Tessa is actually portrayed by Katrin Nugent, and then Caleb actually plays Aaron, who is her producer. So she comes to this remote place. Now, she ruined her phone due to a documentary that her and Aaron made, and the problem with it is that it got them into some very hot water. They're being sued. I guess that's the easy way to say it. So we actually get to see Simon the realtor, who's played by Tasso Mikorolis, showing her around and everything like that. And now he tells her about a curfew, and this actually makes Tessa kind of confused a little bit. So it sounds like, though, the documentary was about a politician. It was supposed to be a puff piece, but then it actually grew into something much more. And we actually see Tessa, and she is drinking and kind of dancing around her place that she is staying in. And then there's like a siren that is signaling the curfew. So then we have Betsy, who is a neighbor portrayed by Maria Wolf. She stops by. She kind of alerts a little bit to Tessa about the town and everything. Kind of scolds her for not putting her trash can out. And then Tessa that next night ends up going to search in the basement, finds a bunch of tapes. Now on it, there's one of them was a lady named Amelia, who's played by Casey Hartnett. She is singing, and we learn that she was pregnant, is losing track of time, worried because things are kind of weird happening. And then we hear somebody busting in who might be named Freddie, and then something moves around in the basement, and Tessa goes down to get the rest of the tapes. So this first episode, I gave it a 7 out of 10. I rather was hooked to see where this would go. Then part 2 is Lowry. This one, Tessa learns about a former tenant of the rental home who went missing and then finds an unlikely ally. So this one here, she starts looking into what is happening. She starts watching more of the tapes, listening to different things like that. Amelia actually on one of them tells the story of meeting the father to her child. And then she ends up going to the local library, tells a story about being a genealogist, that her father was from this town. Now, the librarian is Sue Ann, portrayed by Tina Ann Brock. She doesn't really buy the story, but she does take her down to look at some microfiche on old newspapers. Now, Tessa ends up finding a story about some missing volunteers. They ended up dead. And then the person that she kind of starts to look for is Frederick Crane, portrayed by Alexander Platt. Now, this one, she finds him that he might have been the one who killed Amelia. That's who the first person was being accused for doing that and everything. She ends up going to a local bar, and we meet Dave, the bartender, portrayed by Cordo Joma. And then there's a guy who gets up and leaves. This makes Tessa leave as well. Dave goes out and tells her that he needs to kind of give up what he's doing here. But then Tessa ends up finding this guy. She ends up offering him some booze. It's actually kind of a funny story there because it tastes like cupcakes. And then they start talking, and this is where we learn about Thomas Beard, the first mayor, who had this really weird kind of way of breaking horses, and that he says Lowry's a big, scary story. And then there's very something interesting about this guy she's talking to. It's Freddy, the murder suspect. I also gave this episode a 7 out of 10. So then the last one I got to check out was going to be The Bone King. Tessa comes clean about why she ran away to Lowry, agrees to meet Freddy before curfew, and then faces a new threat as the strange walls of Lowry begin to close in. So this one here is where we learn about, she actually stays and she's very sad, or he gets very sad as she goes to leave after she realizes who he is. And then she does come back, sits down. He starts telling her some stories and everything. Now, there's a scary story in this area about a thing called the Bone King. It's supposed to be roaming the woods, like a boogeyman story. Now, Freddy ends up hearing something, gets spooked, wants her to meet him 30 minutes before curfew, as the synopsis said. And then Freddy was the guy that she did the trick on. That would be Amelia. That's kind of the story that we heard earlier. It was very kind of cute. And then the guy from the bar turns out to be Robert, portrayed by John R. Smith Jr. He actually comes out to the house that Tessa is staying in. She gets very freaked out. She leaves and goes out after curfew. And then something kind of happens here where the Bone King might not be as fake as she believed, and it might actually be something in these woods, or there might be something more to it. So this one here, I gave a 7.5 out of 10. Definitely interested to see where this show will end up going here, but that's all I have here for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
Trick or treat! Silver's creeping and crawling down your spine. That's that touch of mine. I won't tell no lie.
Hello? Dude, are you seeing this? Where are we?
And for my first featured review here is actually going to be VHS Halloween. So this one, I'll get into why it's going to be here, but it's going to be 2025 is when this came out. This is directed between Brian M. Ferguson, Casper Kelly, R.H. Norman, Alex Ross Perry, Michelin Pitt, Paco Plaza, and Anna Slovovic. Now, this is also written by Ferguson, Slokovic, Alberto Marini, Plaza, Kelly, Perry, Pitt, and R.H. Norman. So then this is starring David Hayden, Anna McKelvey, and Adam James Johnson. This is actually an anthology, so there's a ton of people here. I'm going to leave a bunch of them out, but we also have like Eddie McKenzie, Joshua Haynes, Alexander Cox, Aisha Lal, Becca Murphy, Ivor Navante Jack, Hugh Minari, Tom Lowles, Joshua Frater Loughlin, Daniel Kambanda, Greer Montgomery, Milana Ross, Ferguson, Samantha Cochran, and Natalia Montgomery Fernandez. So this is a found footage splatter horror film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.8 on IMDb and a 3.0 on Letterboxd for our synopsis being. A collection of Halloween-themed videotapes unleashes a series of twisted, blood-soaked tales turning trick-or-treat into a struggle for survival. So this is a sequel I wasn't shocked to learn that was coming out. I also didn't necessarily know that it was. This series of films were one that I stumbled upon when I was working at Family Video. I know I took the first one home, really kind of dug that one. Took the second one home, kind of same boat there. And then since then, I've always kind of kept up with the installments. Not each year. I mean, I have more recently, but there was a stretch where I was kind of behind on them for a minute. And then as they started coming out, doing this podcast, I, started catching up. So seeing this year's version was themed around Halloween, I was kind of cool that happened. So I actually got the chance to see this in one of 2 screenings in the country where it was part of Nightmares Film Festival. It actually kicked off day 4. So I figured since it was showing there, I would go ahead and just push this out and make it a featured review since this is my Halloween episode. And let's go ahead and do some of the featured notes then for our key people here. I'll start with our directors, and that's going to be Ferguson. This is his feature film debut. Ahead of this, he's done 12 shorts. Good for him. Then there's Kelly. He's done 4 movies, first that I've seen. Everything he's done in genre. He did the Adult Swim Yule Log 1 and 2. I haven't seen those ones yet. He also has an upcoming project of Buddy that's in genre. Also did 7 shorts. Then we have Pitt Norman. She's done 2 features and 1 short, first that I've seen of hers. Her other film, Cosmetic, doesn't look to be released yet. That's in genre. She also did this with Norman. He has the same 2 films. I've seen this, and he's also done 4 shorts. Next is Perry. He's held 12 motion pictures and 2 shorts, first of his that I've seen, first in genre. Now, someone that I've seen a previous movie from finally is Plaza. He's done 16 and 4 shorts. I've now seen 5 as I've seen all the Rec movies. Oh, he did not do 4, looks like. I did see Veronica, though. Has 12 in genre. Everything that I've seen from him, I'm just missing 3, are Sister Death, The Grandmother, and Roma Santa. Now, the last director is Lovaka. She's done 2 works and 2 shorts, first that I've seen. Now, she has another one, Appendage. That's on my list. I just missed it the year that it came out. Let's go to the writing room. We have a lot of the same suspects here. Norman has written everything he's directed. Same for Pitt Norman. This applies to Slovakovic. Ferguson's only writing credit for a feature is this, has 6 shorts. Then there is Marini. He has done 16 works. First of his that I've seen has 9 in horror. Top 3 that I haven't yet are Sleep Tight. That one's high up on my list. Wake Up and Extinction. I almost watched Extinction, but it didn't line up how I wanted to. Now, Plaza has written 10 features and 2 shorts. I've seen 6. The new one that he didn't direct here is I've seen this one, but to include something extra here, he did Quarantine, the American remake of Wreck. I have not seen Sister Death, Freddy, or Second Name. We then go to Kelly. He's written 5 movies and 7 shorts. I've seen 2 with this and Mandy. The missing 3 are the ones that he directed, Yule Log 1 and 2, and the upcoming Buddy. Last year is Perry. Has 12 features and 1 short, only one that I've seen, and in genre. Then I'm just going to pull 3 actors here, starting with Grayson. She's been in 2 films and 1 short, only one that I've seen, and only one in genre. Then there's a Nicklin that I'm going to do here. She's been in 49 motion pictures and 9 shorts. I've seen her in this, Round the Decay, Everwinter Night, and If It Bleeds. 35 are in horror that she's done. Top 3 that I'm missing are Popeye the Slayer Man, Garden of Eden, and The Basement. Then last is Hogan. She's been in 3 films and 3 shorts, first in genre that I have seen. So let's kind of talk about the different shorts we have here. First, we have our wraparound called Diet Phantasma. This is a corporation that's trying out a diet version of their most popular drink, having test groups give their feedback. The gimmick is that the product is supposedly made with real ghost extract. So this is trying to get it right, and there's some dangerous consequences for these focus group people. Then the first story that we actually see play out is Coochie Coochie Coo. So this is the last hurrah for 2 teens that are getting ready to go off to college. There's Lacey, portrayed by Cochran, and Kaylee, portrayed by Fernandez. They go off trick-or-treating, kind of running amok a bit. While they're out, we hear about a young woman who disappeared the previous year. There's a local legend about a witch. These 2 come to realize that it's all too real. Then we go to Ut Supra Sic Infra. So this is where this one jumps back and forth between past and the present. So in the past, we had this group of teens that went into a room where a medium used to conduct seances. Now on the wall is a phrase, and the only survivor, Anric, portrayed by Teo Planello, read it. A black phone appeared in the middle of the room. It started ringing. What happens next terrifies everybody. It also happens again as the police investigate, as they bring Heinrich back into this room and have him kind of recap what happened and do everything in the same exact order. Our next story is Fun Size. Another older group of trick-or-treaters. We have Haley, portrayed by Jenna Hogan, with her boyfriend Josh, portrayed by Riley Nottingham, along with a newly engaged couple of Lauren, portrayed by Lawson Grayson, and Austin by Jake Ellsworth. They face dire consequences when they make a poor decision and not follow the rules. Lauren only agreed to marry Austin out of pity. Ignoring a sign to take one from a candy bowl, they encounter a severe punishment from Fun Size, who is portrayed by Michael J. Seiflaff. So next up is KidPrint. This is a service that a local company offers to help to keep an up-to-date video and photographs of your children in case they go missing. I'm actually going to do some trivia about that here in just a second, but this is run by Tim Kaplan, portrayed by Stephen Goodwars. There's a string of disappearances in this town that make the authorities all but cancel Halloween. A grisly discovery is made. Not everybody is as they seem, and evidence can be altered. What I'll go ahead and say is that this one is inspired by Blockbuster Video in the mid-90s. Participating stores had a kiosk that children could stand in front to show off their height, and staff would use a video camera to record a short video of them speaking basic information about themselves. Parents would then take the tapes home for ID purposes in case their child went missing. Kind of a cool little thing that they did there, and I kind of remember that. I don't think my local Blockbuster was in during that time, but I did note that it was a thing. So the last story before the wraparound ends is Home Haunt. We see home videos of when Keith, portrayed by Jeff Harms, and his son used to have a blast setting up a haunted house in their backyard. Now that Zach, who is the older version of this kid, portrayed now by Noah Diamond, is older, he's mocked in school, and he doesn't want to help out anymore. He does agree for one last one. Keith takes a strange record from a local antique shop in a room that is kind of sectioned off and you're not supposed to kind of go in there. It will then create the most realistic iteration yet, but can they survive? So that's really my recap of the rest of the characters. Let me just say that I had a blast with this installment. Much like I did with the previous ones, I'm going to break this down each segment, give it a score, and then I'm going to do an average in the end to give my overall score. I'll briefly go over to the wraparound of Diet Fatisma. I think the concept is hilarious. It does get repetitive, and it does remind me of like the different versions of like soda and the commercials for them, like from when I was growing up. So the acting's a bit over the top here. That fits the campy nature. Tying in a bit more as to why we're seeing the other videos would help. So this one doesn't fully work for me as a wraparound. Not necessarily required though. I just did kind of want to say that for my personal preference. Then to look at Coochie Coochie Coo, I do love the overall idea. I remember the last time I went out to have trick-or-treating before I had children, there was this idea of clinging to childhood one more time before moving on to college or working, because I was probably a junior in high school, because I believe my senior year I played a football game. Cochran and Fernandez were solid as the leads. I did see this being compared to a movie that came out a couple years ago. That connection jumped out to me as well. Not necessarily the same boat, but I mean there's definitely elements that are similar. So this does go more supernatural. The woman, Elena Musser, is a witch. I did like the subtle reveal to explain why she's doing what she is. It's gross. I appreciated that. There's probably a little bit of CGI here. It doesn't necessarily bother me. The practical effects, though, were good. This house is so creepy. And I like how there's like temporal issues here where it makes it almost like cosmic. I mean, it's definitely supernatural. Like we're seeing like a father and daughter walk by. They don't seem to notice the house. So our duo go up to ring the doorbell. With things that happen inside, it makes it even scarier. This one has set the tone for the rest of the anthology for me. We then go to International with Ut Supra Sic Infra. What worked here for me was that we have the different approach to a seance. Using a telephone is a cool idea. It's interesting that I've seen multiple reviews reference how it reminds them of the black phone. I can see that, but what's kind of interesting to me is there is a phrase written upside down in a different language, and it's actually as above, so below, so it made me think of that movie. How that comes into play with what we see. This short goes darker, which is a good progression. The acting was solid across the board. It's interesting to correlate what is happening in the present by intercutting it with how things happen in the past. So I thought this was another strong short. Now, I do know here that we have... In this one of the Halloween costumes is a fire chief's uniform, which is most likely a reference to Wreck, another film that Paco Plaza did, because he was the director of this short, and I also think he was the co-writer. So then this actually goes to probably my favorite short. I actually think when I was doing my rating, it's going to be the next one, but this one's fun size. This, we have a group I thought that we followed was good. Kind of the same thing I was saying about the first one. Grayson, Nottingham, Hogan, and Ellsworth were all solid. I like that they're showing off here and what they kind of do. Josh is ignoring the warning, believing since that no one's watching, he can get away with it. Kind of makes me think of when we leave candy bowls out. Something happens that's gross. I appreciate how mean-spirited this went. The filmmaking also helps here. I like the cinematography and framing. Going to this factory becomes a nightmare because no matter what they do, they can't escape. The effects were good. The fun-sized character and his helpers are terrifying. I love how campy yet twisted this short was. Then we go to the darkest of them, and that's Kid Print. I saw this with my buddy Tony since he also came to the festival. And he alerted me that this is the one that had backlash. Dealing with children disappearing and then seeing what happens to them, I can see why it bothers people. As a parent, even more so. I also don't think this goes as over the top as they could have, so that was good there. I won't reveal what happens here, but it does remind me a little bit of John Wayne Gacy. So the acting here was good. The premise, like I said, worked for me. The reveal didn't shock me. It makes sense. Cinematography and framing were solid. We also have some good elements here of editing between the films. that were made to protect children, and it kind of gives it just an eerie vibe that works for the atmosphere, and we kind of what'll shift between what they're actually doing to give to the parents and then like a darker form. That was a good touch. Everything up to this point I thought was kind of being well made with what they were, especially what they're doing there. I did want to bring up here that there was another bit of trivia, is that in real life, Carl Garrison, the actor playing Bruce in Kid Print segment of VHS Halloween, is actually a minister, so kind of a weird duality there. So then let's go to the final segment of Home Haunt. This one was also strong. I love how this was set up with his father and son. Thought they were having a great time doing this. When he was a child, that was the case. Now that he's closer to high school, he gets mocked for it. The father deals with a rude neighbor, which I'll kind of get into him in a second. I didn't realize this until looking at it on the trivia. There's some nostalgia of losing what we thought was something the family loved to do together. It's a fitting that this is the last one that no one will forget if they survive. Then this has a fun concept. It reminds me of things like Ghoulies or Waxwork. It's interesting that this is trying to make this haunt as scary as possible. It has become something that could kill everybody. The cinematography framing were good here. The effects were solid. And I don't have any gripes here that I need to kind of point out with that. And in the Home Haunt segment, famed makeup and creature effects artist Rick Baker plays the grumpy old man neighbor Rich, who is complaining the whole time about how the haunt sucks. I thought that was funny. In conclusion, this is a strong entry in the long-running found footage anthology series, delivering a solid Halloween-themed cinematic experience. The wraparound Diet Fatisma sets a campy, intriguing tone, while the segments Coochie Coochie Coo, Oot Supra Sick Infra, Fun-Size Kid Print, and Home Haunt offer distinct, well-crafted scares ranging from supernatural folk horror and dark cosmic dread to whimsical, mean-spirited, and gut-wrenching darkness. While some segments push boundaries and touch on sensitive subjects, the overall technical execution, strong acting, effectiveness, use of practical and digital effects make this highly recommendable watch for fans of the franchise and the horror genre. So, for me, I gave this one's up there as one of my favorites, actually. I wasn't sure how I was going to fall. I've heard kind of some people liking this one, some people not enjoying it as well, some people not even able to finish it. And for me, like I said, 8 out of 10. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. I don't necessarily need to delve into anything deeper there. So let me go ahead and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
Todos dudaban de sus poderes sobrenaturales. Nadie creyó en su pacto satánico. Hasta que en una noche de luna llena, un grupo de jóvenes penetró en el mundo del más allá, en el mundo del terror.
Mire, capitán. Usted desconoce muchas cosas de la vida de Devlon.
¿Cómo qué? ¿Como las misas negras? ¿Como sus rezos a Satanás?
¡Lena! ¡Lena!
Nadie antes había vivido una experiencia tan aterradora.
¡Cálmate! ¿Qué tienes?
¡Los mataron!
¿A quién mataron? ¿A quién?
¡A Oscar y a Mariana!
Ahora ellos ya saben que existe. Solo ellos podrán acabar con él. Cementerio del terror. Cementerio del terror. La más escalofriante pesadilla. Con Hugo Stiglitz, Erika Buenfil, Uzi Velasco, María Rebeca, Edna Volcan, Servando Mancetti, Eduardo Capetillo, René Cardona III, Andrés García Jr., Jacqueline Castro.
And for my second featured review is going to be Cemetery of Terror. This goes by the original title of Cementerio del Terror from 1985. This is directed by Ruben Galindo Jr. Now, this was written by him as well as Carlos Vladimir. This is starring Hugo Stiglitz, Uzi Velasco, and Erika Buenfil, while also featuring here Edna Bolkin, Raul Morez, Rene Cardona III, Servando Manzetti, Andres Garcia Jr., Maria Rebecca, Cesar Adrian Sanchez, Lily Zoto, Eduardo Capetillo, Manico Mori, Jose Gomez Parcero, Cesar Velasco, Betty Robles, Jacqueline Castro, Leo Villanueva. So this one is a Spanish body slasher teen horror thriller film. A little bit of zombies mixed in there as well. This is from Mexico. Currently sitting on a 5.4 on IMDb and a 3.0 on Letterboxd, where a synopsis being: on Halloween night, a group of bored teens decide to steal a corpse from a local morgue and take it nearby cemetery where they perform a ritual, unwittingly reviving a bloodthirsty serial killer. So this is a film that I originally heard about thanks to the 22 Shots of Moods in Horror. It was covered over there, and I went on a list of ones to see. I actually remember I made a comment. Moods said something about me not listening to the show, and I had to point out you guys have so many episodes and so many things you covered that, yeah, that's how I knew about it. But, you know, I'm getting old. I decided to take this as, since it takes place on Halloween and it was in 1985, so it doubled as a voyage to the fives. I knew the basic premise and what I heard in the podcast. Had been a while since hearing it as well, so I pretty much came into this one blind. Just knew it's kind of goes off the rails. So let's do some featured notes. I'll start with the director of Galindo. He has directed 10 films. This is the first that I've seen. Has 6 in horror. Top 3 that I have in are Don't Panic, Grave Robbers, and The Demon Rat. He also wrote this. He did 5 features. He did this 3 times with the 2 that I haven't seen, Don't Panic and The Demon Rat. That kind of rounds out the 5, I believe, with, yeah. So the co-writer here is Vladimir. He did this for 92 movies, 15 are in genre. The only one that I haven't seen of his work, or this is the only one that I've seen of his works, that's what I'm trying to say there. The top 3 that I have in are Grave Robbers, Cyclone, and the Bermuda Triangle. Moving down the cast, I'm going to start with good old Hugo Stiglitz. I know, like, his name will always be etched in my brain. I've only seen one movie, I believe, with him in it, yeah. But his name is also featured in Inglourious Bastards. Paying homage to this actor, I believe. He was in 172 motion pictures. I've seen 2 now with this in Nightmare City. He has 14 horror films, and the top 3 that I haven't yet are The Night of a Thousand Cats, Cyclone, and one that's on my list of Tintorera, Killer Shark. And then we go over to Bloomfell, who has 10 features. First that I've seen, has 4 in genre. She was in Grave Robbers, Appointment with Death, and The Hex. Then to Bolkin. She's been in 66 works. Not horror, she was in License to Kill, the James Bond film. Has 11 horror films. Top 3 that I have that I'm missing are Don't Panic, Grave Robbers, and AR-15, Relentless Command. Not heard of that one. Alright, so let's jump in this one. We start with a man sleeping in a chair. This is Dr. Cardin, portrayed by Stiglitz. His television is on, but it's static. We then see his dream, which is a woman with a hurt foot fleeing and being chased. She is then cornered in an elevator. The police show up to save her, but they're late. Dr. Cardin then wakes up. Then shifts over to a group of people. I read somewhere that they're medical students who are planning a party. The claim, though, is that it's a jet set party. So there's supposed to be all these like rich, successful people there. And there's one woman in particular who's pretty excited about that. I believe it's Olivia. So the ones playing in this are Oscar, portrayed by Cardona, and Jorge, portrayed by Manzetti. Now, Jorge's girlfriend is Olivia, portrayed by Bolkin. She is supposed to go to a rock concert, but they sway her because of all these people that are supposed to be at this place. So also coming are Lena, portrayed by Buenfil, and Anita, portrayed by Rebecca. I believe there's also Pedro, portrayed by Garcia. All the women are upset when they arrive to this abandoned mansion right next to a cemetery. It takes Olivia a minute to realize that she was lied to. So this place belongs to Devlin. This is a guy who was portrayed by Parcero. He was a serial killer who was obsessed with Satan. Now, he is the guy that Dr. Cardin had his nightmare about. His panic now has him seeking the aid of a judge to get the body cremated. There's a problem here, though. The guys decide to pull a prank on Halloween, so their idea is to steal a body. They find one that's the ugliest, which turns out to be Devlin. They sneak him out the back, and then they go to the mansion. Jorge finds a strange black book upstairs. They read from it, which brings Devlin back to life. This is actually probably his master plan. He has the ability to bring back others, conjuring an army of zombies. Then to add to the stress, a group of children come to the cemetery. I think they're kind of also doing their own Halloween prank, and they get locked inside. So that's only my recap actually of the character. I want to start is saying that this movie is wild. It incorporates a lot of different genres. It feels like it's a bit of a slasher at first to pull us in, then switches to homage like the Evil Dead or Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things with this ritual that summons the dead. From there it goes supernatural with zombies and magic that trap our characters in the cemetery. It's definitely a trip. Now that I've set up, I do like the concept here. You can tell that it doesn't have a big budget. I wouldn't be shocked to learn that co-writer-director Galindo was inspired by like the Evil Dead. I do know that the Galindos are like Mexican horror royalty. This is the first film that was directed by Ruben that I've seen. I think I've seen something by his father, maybe his uncle, something like that, from earlier, like the 1960s. This is a little bit all over the place. I ended up just kind of rolling with the insanity. Let's then talk about our villain, Devlin. I love the idea, like the serial killer who's a Satanist. Kind of goes back to like Richard Ramirez. I don't know who came first though. Feels convenient that this group of teens would select his former house and end up bringing his body there. I could almost say that there's dark forces guiding things here, hinted at by the nightmare that Dr. Carden has. I do like that it's almost like a good versus evil with the main characters here, being that it's also on Halloween. The teens doing a prank that starts everything, that's all good there, that works for me. I do then want to go over to the filmmaking. I was looking this up, and Galindo has a USC background, likely influences his good cinematography and framing in this isolated cemetery horror. His experience in the Mexican film industry also contributes, I would guess. The practical, sometimes gross effects were great, and I appreciate that despite the occasional cheesiness about it. I mean, this probably doesn't have the biggest budget, but they're definitely using it to the max. So the zombie design is excellent, and the sound builds atmosphere. My only minor complaint here, I don't love when some of these foreign zombie films where the zombies don't work and walk in a way that they should. This one even more so that they're supernatural, but they kind of just like hover back when they should be attacking characters. I get that you have certain things you need to do and everything like that, but that kind of breaks some of the realism for me at times. All that's left then to be the acting performances. When I saw that Stiglitz starred, I sat up in my chair. He's good as the only one that truly knows how dangerous Devlin is, so I do like having him as that character. And then being that character at the dead is start, he is ignored, which makes sense. It actually kind of reminds me, well after the fact, like reading Nosferatu, where they don't believe the main character there for similar things. I like Buenfil, Bolkin, Rebecca Cardona, Marzetti, and Garcia. They work as this main group that we follow. I do love how many of them there are, so it actually gives us a lot of people where you're kind of panicked about who might die. They also start this mess. Parcero has a good look for Devlin. We don't really see his face much, but his size is definitely on point. The children are fine. My only problem there is I don't necessarily truly ever think that they're in peril, but there's the terror that all the characters show. That's good, so no problems there. So there's not a whole lot that I can kind of keep going here, but this is a wild, enjoyable ride that blends slasher elements with supernatural horror, paying homage to classics like The Evil Dead. While it might be all over the place, it's a unique concept, strong cinematography, and effective practical effects make it a memorable watch. Stiglitz leads a capable cast in the film like this, despite some minor quibbles, delivers a fun and genuinely terrifying experience set against the backdrop of Halloween night. So my rating here then, I gave Cemetery of Terror this first watch a 7 out of 10. So I didn't have the greatest way of watching it because mine had like ads every 10 minutes. So this is one that I kind of want to pick up and give it a rewatch to see if it sits better. And it might be one of those things that now I've seen it once, it might even work as well. So that's all I have here for this one. I'm not going to do a spoiler section like I said. Let me go ahead then jump you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page where I have all of my reviews, whether that is going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the PodNation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So, yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And for my next episode, it's going to be, we're going to be kicking off season 6, but it's going to be a little bit different just because I wanted to complete the Hooptober challenge. And so what it's going to be here is that the 2 featured reviews, I will get these ones in no matter what. I have already watched the first one here, and it's kind of bumming me out, but I have finished the Dario Argento filmography of horror films as I finally watched his other Masters of Horror episode, Jennifer. This is actually a Voyage to the Fives 2005 watch. And then I'm going to be pairing it up, I believe, with Eyeball. I know this is a Gialli. I believe it's Umberto Lindsay. Not really sure how I selected that one, but it's on here. And then the ones I've already watched that'll be on the episode are going to be Horror Castle. This one is a kind of modern gothic little Italian film. And then I got to go to the Gateway Film Center to check out Shelby Oaks. I gave a watch to Burn Witch Burn. That's one that's been covered previously on here, but I also checked out the German Chainsaw Massacre. This is a weird little kind of horror comedy from Germany. And then I don't know what the other ones are going to be. I'll have more mini reviews as well as I fill out that episode. So I don't think there's anything else I'm going to do here for this outro except say that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending